podcast here this week on KORN News Radio. We're back here. It's new month, brand new season. Travis Kriens and also Marcus Traxler and Landon Dierks from the Mitchell Republic. A few weeks off, so we got a lot to get to with high school basketball here around the state. Mitchell Kernels, we were there on Friday night at Sioux Falls Lincoln. Let's start there. Mitchell basketball, both now with the 10 wins on the season. They're 10-2. Girls win that first game, a big second half for them. Then the Mitchell boys pull off the upset, defeating number one and previously undefeated Sioux Falls Lincoln by 11 points, 69-58. And all three of us were there. Packed gym, probably 1,800 people there. The best road atmosphere that I've seen since I've been doing this, past 5-10 years. And Mitchell really dominated that game from the onset. They led the entire way. They were up 18 in that third quarter. Lincoln would cut it to 6, but really wouldn't threaten. Mitchell went on a 5-0 run after that to go up 11. So, I think everybody thought Sioux Falls Lincoln would win this game, and this was a measuring stick to see how the Kernels would do. And, you could probably put Mitchell at number one. Somebody's going to have to beat them at the state tournament in March in Rapid City, because this was the best they've played all year against the best team they've played, and that's kind of what championship teams do when they play top competition.
When you play in Sioux Falls, you have an hour when you're driving over to talk about the game, to think about how it's going to go. So, of course, Landon and I talked about what has to happen for Mitchell to win this game, and almost it went as perfectly as you could have it go if you're Mitchell. Lincoln did not have a very good shooting night, at least compared to making 16 threes or whatever they made against Washington earlier in the week. Mitchell found their offense to a degree that they really have not had in a large quantity this season, and they got contributions from everybody. I like to talk about this big three percentage of what percentage of the points come from Hinker, Talley, and Smith, and it was low again on Friday night because they had other players contribute, and that just makes you more difficult to guard. And the thing I wrote about from the game on Friday, they played noticeably harder than they played in the previous games. You look at the T game, you look at the game against Roosevelt last week, and part of that is because of the quality of the opponent. You've got to play extremely hard to beat a team like Lincoln, and they did. And I think it could be forebode well for what we might see in the second half of the season and in March.
I was just really impressed by, I think there was a lot of talk after that Tuesday night result where, Mitchell survives a good run from Roosevelt, and at the same time over in Sioux Falls, Lincoln just shellacked Washington. And Washington's a good team. I don't think anyone has that twist. They're still going to be in the mix. I would expect them to make a state tournament appearance. And it was 80-35, I think. Yep. And so it was like, wow, this Friday night game could go many different ways, and it seems like maybe there's a narrow path. But Mitchell came out, and like both of you kind of said, they were in control the whole game. I didn't really realize it until afterward that Lincoln had never led in the game. And apart from a little bit there in the second quarter, they really didn't threaten to take the lead in the game. And so I don't think that's an indictment against Lincoln. I still think they're, at the moment, probably the team to beat, because they turned around. I don't know if you guys saw this. They turned around on Saturday and held T to 18 points. Yeah. That's a T area team scoring like 63 points a game. And so they're still very good, but I think Mitchell showed everybody that they haven't fallen off as much as people might think they have, because they dropped a couple of games here in the early part of the season.
I think there's two teams in Class AA basketball that you do not want to play twice, and that's Mitchell and Lincoln. And Mitchell has already, they've lost twice, once to Harrisburg, once to Huron. I don't think either of those teams would be real thrilled to have to play Mitchell again. And I don't know how excited Mitchell will be to play Lincoln again, because Mitchell is a very good Lincoln is a very good team. And I think a lot of things went right for Mitchell in this first game. Not that they can't win again, but is it all going to go exactly like that again in the second time around? I don't think so.
They made the Patriots, so much was made of, and then still, rightfully so, Lincoln has so many options, especially for shooting the ball from the perimeter. And it was just all Sam Erickson, it felt like.
It was.
On Friday night. He ends up with 26 or 28.
28 of 58. And for a while there, it was 15 out of 20.
He had 15 of their 20 in the first half. He had 26 of their first 38 points. Yeah. And so he was the only good thing going. And if you're going to make one person beat you, Mitchell's going to win those games.
Sam Erickson had he had 6 of their 7 3-pointers. They were 7 of 23 from 3, and Sutton Thompson was on them for a lot of the game. And, first time seeing Sam Erickson, a terrible shot taker, just taking terrible fadeaway threes that went down, and he made them. And it's like, well, you can't fault the defense. I mean, he's right there. I'll give you're an outstanding shooter. I'll give you the fadeaway 25-footers, and if they go in, then so be it, and he can do that. But he was the only one doing that. And then at the end of the game in that fourth quarter, there were 49 points scored between the two teams. It was 24 for Mitchell, 25 for Lincoln, and they finally figured, okay, let's take Brody Schaefer, just run him to the hole. A lot of fouls early in that one. Lincoln made that run with getting to the foul line and getting into the bonus with about 5.5 minutes to go. And that was kind of how they got back into the game, by just driving to the basket with Schaefer. But Marcus Talley hit a couple big threes early. I mean, that helped. Both teams kind of struggled in the first 3 minutes scoring, but then Marcus Talley had those 3-pointers. Colton Smith looked like he could have been out for the game. He was very ginger on one of his legs, and he comes back in that second quarter. Our player of the game, we gave the game ball and the Culver certificate to Gavin Hinker. Maybe had his worst game of the year versus Roosevelt on Tuesday with that foul trouble. Just couldn't stay out there. But then he comes out, 13 of his 15 points in that second half, and Lincoln had no answer for Hinker. That was a huge mismatch, and he really dominated that second half.
That's the one big positive, I think, looking at what Mitchell was able to exploit against Lincoln. They have the size element. They have the post player that Lincoln doesn't have, and maybe not a lot of other teams in the state have. And when Gavin Hinker is playing at that ability, that level, it's very impressive. Colton Smith made the point at the end of the game. That's the best he's ever seen Gavin Hinker play, and he played great. So that was an inside element. I think just, between him and Owen Rammel and some of the guys that they were kind of able to throw in at the forward position to sort of disrupt what Lincoln had going on, I think that was also a major plus in this game. And, the thing I was most impressed with in the fourth quarter was Landon and I were kind of watching, and I was making the point of, like, they need to be running some clock off, and they did, but they also executed and made shots at the end of that time frame. And when you make the shots, you don't leave the door open for Lincoln to get back in the game. And I was kind of a little bit nervous for Mitchell, just watching that.
Because early in the quarter, they had 2, and Riker Kreitzfeld admitted as much, 2 terrible turnovers early in the quarter. And that was when I think Lincoln cut it down to 5 or 6 points. And then they push it back up. And then after that, Mitchell settled in, handled their business, and as Marcus was saying, were composed. They ran some clock. They made some shots. They got open looks largely. It was a really quality way to close out the game.
But you've seen that before, where teams will get up big and all of a sudden the press comes and it becomes a little bit frantic, and all of a sudden you're making mistakes, and before you know it, it's a tie game, or Lincoln's got all the momentum in their home gym. So, that showed some wherewithal as well, that Mitchell was able to close the game out and, make the plays down the stretch and get out of there with a win. And I agree with what you were saying about the atmosphere. I thought it was great. I think there were a lot of elements in play that sort of led to that, it being a Friday night, it being a doubleheader.
Senior night for them.
Senior night for
the
them.
boys.
Yeah, so I think that was a fun experience, about as good as you're going to have in the regular season.
I thought it compared to when it would have been Cade Hinker's senior year when they played Roosevelt over there. That was about the only one I could think of to compare it to.
Rebounds, depending on what box score you look at, plus 14, plus 15 rebounding. They basically doubled them up. And Lincoln tried that full court press in the second half and didn't really do a whole lot with it. They got a couple of turnovers here and there, but Mitchell was fairly effective beating that press. And as you mentioned, they ran the clock down and ended the possession with points. So, yeah, they kind of went through it. You maybe think Lincoln's the best offensive team. Mitchell has the best defense, and in this case, the defense won out.
All credit to the stats crews for these two teams, because this was about as close of a two high school box scores as I've seen. There's maybe one shot or one rebound they were off in either direction, but we've seen some wide disparities, so nice job there.
Professionals there on at Sioux Falls Lincoln, and you get to maybe this 60% of the season now done. You have Sioux Falls Jefferson, the opponent for the Kernels, tomorrow night on Tuesday at 7 o'clock. And Jefferson, they've taken a step back here. They've won 2 in a row, but they went through a stretch there, losers of 8 of 9. So that's a game that Mitchell has to put away next week. And then after that, you're not really going to be tested for a while here. You have Sturgis and Spearfish this weekend. Sturgis, a 5-7 team on Friday night. And then, of course, I'm always suspect of Spearfish. They're at 8-3 in that 4 or 5 seed discussion, but of course they haven't played anybody. So we'll see how Spearfish stacks up on Saturday. Then you basically
of note though, that is the like noon game or whatever you want to say on the second day of that weird doubleheader.
2:00. Yeah,
I think coaches always circle that one as like. And you just got to make sure you come out and play because weird things can happen.
I'm just looking at the score. I don't know what the complexion of the game was, but they lost to Harrisburg by 6. So, I mean, I can't sit here and say it's not a factor, but I guess if you're Spearfish, you're going to Huron on Friday night, then you turn around playing Mitchell on Saturday. So not an easy 2-game pair for them either.
It'll be great to see them against the AA team since they've only played 6 of them, and it'll be great to see them this side of the river since they haven't taken a trip more than 5 minutes from home. So that'll be very exciting for them to actually get on a bus once and travel and play some other AA teams. They play Yankton Brookings at the end of the season. That's another trip, but
we were talking about potential names for this podcast. I mean, maybe it just needs to be the Spearfish,
it should be.
Spearfish Hour.
Spearfish Journal.
Yeah.
Road games for Spearfish this year: Belle Fourche, Hot Springs, Hill City. That's your list. We're in February.
Yeah.
Great.
I don't know if
it is what it is. For what it's worth, they are 5th in the seed point standings.
I don't know if you guys saw the proposal that was from Pierre to basically to play you play everybody else in AA one time.
What a concept.
I mean, it wouldn't it wouldn't be great for Mitchell because that would only leave one game to not play against the AA school. So I guess Hope City Classic, they'd have to find something else to, Mitchell would only have one game there. But aside from that, I don't. And I do like Mitchell playing Huron twice, which isn't going to happen going forward. But other than that, I guess this is a type of a scenario we're talking about where they're not playing any of the Sioux Falls schools, a team like Spearfish or Sturgis. So, and then the postseason scheduling seeding would be a lot simpler as well.
You also have a Douglas team who is currently 4-6. They are the 14th seed with wins over a team from Nebraska. That's 3-6. They also beat Sturgis. They beat Belle Fourche, who's a 3-win team. They also beat Lee Deadwood. So they have
not all schedules created equally.
No, they have yet to Sturgis, their only AA win, and it's very likely that they may have 1 or 2 AA wins, and they're probably going to get into the SODAC 16 because they still have half their schedule versus A school, so that needs to change. Hopefully that does. On the girls' side of things, again, another slow start. That just seems to be what the Mitchell girls do. There's whether it's the first half or the second half, there's a slow stretch where they fail to score. Defense is usually good, but again, the first half against Lincoln was not good. You give up 26 points to a team that averages 34 on the season. Second half was much better. They score a season high 63 points. But again, it's a very hot and cold team where I'm not booking my hotel for Rapid City until they win that SODAC 16 game because you just never know. But, they could give everybody a fight. They've got a hot and cold from three-point land, which kind of leads to their style of play. But their defense has been good. They create turnovers. And, again, they've got another stretch of games here before it gets really tough, as it usually does in those last couple weeks, to where they can maybe find themselves 14, 15 wins in that maybe 5-seed discussion.
What I love about this Mitchell girls team is they're a little challenged for size, but they don't let that become a real hindrance, at least not to what I've seen. They have 5 guards who are really, really willing to scrap it up, just kind of get in there, get after the ball, and that causes a lot of teams problems. I feel like every game I've watched of the Mitchell girls this year, they're causing turnovers for the other team left and right. And when you do that, obviously, usually good things happen. And, it's why they're 10-2. I think they're maybe the quietest 10-2 team in this. They weren't getting any attention in the poll until last week, really.
What happened to where they went from receiving votes, then they went up to 4.
Who crashed out? I forget.
Aberdeen ended up losing to O'Gorman, which is, again, a pet peeve of mine. You can lose to the number 1 team by 20 or 30 points. I don't care. And it's not like Mitchell had a great win to propel them. They beat T. T is nothing. So I don't understand
I think Spearfish was the team that dropped out of the top 5.
I don't know what happened to where, and then they move up ahead of Stevens, which I'm fine with because they've beaten Stevens already, but I don't know what took so long, and I don't know what happened, or, Mitchell, we're going to put them 4th because I'm not sure what happened. I'm just...
I mean,
But
for me, I didn't think they were a top 5 team until they beat a Stevens. And then I'm also kind of waiting, okay, of the teams ahead of them, are they going to lose or what's going to happen?
I felt like nobody knew they beat Stevens because the week after, nothing changed. Like Stevens didn't drop a spot. And
I kind of agree.
Kind of happened over that Christmas break. It's like, oh, yeah, they beat Stevens on a Friday night.
And Stevens did not hardly lose any votes.
No. And like it was like, oh, yeah, nobody paid attention. Nobody knew what happened. So, yeah, just kind of a scrappy bunch for Mitchell. They're finally scoring some points. That's been the big issue for them. And, of course, the 50-point run, I think, is up to 32 or 33 right now. And our player of the game was a 7th grader, CC Morgan, who I had not seen before. And Wes Morgan's daughter, I think she's 6'2" already.
6'1" or 6'2", yeah.
And, like, she should be in the rotation now. She played herself, in my opinion, into the rotation to be one of their best players
lately, and yeah, she's impressive. Especially like you said, she's a 7th grader. She doesn't look out of place out there on the varsity court.
I think she makes a lot of sense as a 6th player off the first player coming off the bench in your rotation, and that's no disrespect. I mean, they have some good guards like you're talking about that are also going to be in the mix. But the times I've seen Mitchell, their bigs tend to foul, so there's going to be an opportunity for players to come off the bench, and that ended up being the case on Friday. And CC Morgan, she looks like she belongs out there. There's not a lot of fear. You can tell that she's been around basketball for a lot of her life because she had a couple plays where she went to where the play was going to be at. She wasn't necessarily going what was happening at the very moment. She had a steal that I know caught my attention. My one minor beef with what happened on Friday would be the shot selection. And I know this is a 3-point shooting team to a degree, but they were 7 of 33. They took 63 shots, 33 of them were 3-pointers. They were 15 of 30 on 2-pointers, 50%. Mm-hmm. So maybe a few more 2s and a few less 3s, but I also understand if you make a few more of those 3s, the game's even more lopsided, and that's sort of the risk reward of a 3-pointer. I understand that, but
I feel like they had some good look. They had good looks. Down.
Yeah, it wasn't like they took a lot of bad shots necessarily, but and I mean, I think I don't know if I have the number here, but I mean, Addie Simpson took 14 of them. London Hayek took 11. Those are 2 pretty good shooters, so I understand that aspect of it as well.
Taking a look at the roster here, I don't know if this is be a hot take, but I think CC Morgan's going to be an all-stater. I don't know if you want to go as far as saying AA player of the year and all this stuff.
Let's give it a minute.
But after watching her, I mean, she's got size. She showed that she could shoot.
Yeah.
I mean, to come out there as a 7th grader and look like, even though it was not a good Lincoln team, she went out there and looked like the best player on the floor. So you've got her as a 7th grader. I haven't seen Nia Talley yet as a 7th grader. If they could mix her in, that'd be great. We saw her during volleyball season. London Hayek at times has been their best offensive player. She's a freshman. She just comes into that lineup, and the team kind of goes as she goes because she was scoreless in that first half, ended up with a team high 13, and I don't think that is the first time where she's had a scoreless first half and then it just exploded in the second half. I think she had a game earlier this year where she had 17 all after halftime. So kind of as she goes, this offense goes.
I think it's a good sign for the future, given that they're going to lose some important players to graduation at the end of this year, and Addie Simpson will be back. She'll be a senior next year. But, we're talking about some young players who potentially could factor in before it's all said and done, and that's a good sign, I think, for where at least keeping the program in a good spot going forward. And
speaking of schedules, could we mix up the schedule a bit, get a different order?
Yeah.
It seems like every single year it is the same team, same time of the calendar. And for Mitchell, the girls, it's always tough because you're playing Washington, Brandon Valley, O'Gorman, those final 2 weeks of the season, and those 3 teams have been among the top 5, if not the best teams in the state. So it's always tough when you get to the stretch at the end of the season where your schedule's very backloaded. And it seems like, could we get to something different? We're always playing, Rapid City Schools, end of December. You got this other West River trip in early February with Spearfish and Sturgis. Feels like there's room for probably every couple of years. Let's kind of switch stuff up here and rearrange the schedule because it kind of gets old.
Well,
after a while.
I understand that, but I think if you're the schedule maker, you'd want to keep the games where okay, we have to make a trip, or we're making this trip every 2 years when it comes to Central and Stevens, Spearfish and Sturgis. You want to probably have that in the same spot of the schedule every year. So, and then we have the Hoop City, and we're all of a sudden with the boys, that's 6 games right off the deck. And then I'm guessing the ESD stuff gets scheduled first, and that's 7 more games off the schedule or 8 more games. All of a sudden, the windows become a lot less or become a lot more restrictive, and I think things will change probably once, at least from a Mitchell perspective, when they have more space and a couple more gyms to work with. They could probably fit a few more of these games in easier, but right now I understand why it is the way it is. So,
and do you have I think
I try to give a little more grace than you're willing to give usually.
No grace for me.
Yeah.
Like last year, like the boys started at home, like 9 of their first 10 were at
now
home.
it's the opposite this year.
It's like, okay, let's kind of even this out. We don't need to be playing such a discrepancy with so many home games and so many road games.
That's a little different of where, when a 2-year cycle, you just call Watertown and say, we'll go back to your place this year so that we can even this out a little more. So next year, we have a home game,
And podcast here on KORN, Travis Kriens, Marcus Traxler, and Landon Dierks here. Any thoughts on other high school basketball? We're well over halfway through the season right now. I guess let's start with Class B boys. You've got 3 area teams in contention. You've got Parkston, you've got Howard, you've got Wessington Springs. Anything, whether it's a Class A or Class B, anything spring to mind with area teams or anybody else here with us getting about just a few weeks away here from some playoffs?
This applies to the girls as well, but we thought Parkston would be more competitive now moving into Class B, and that has turned out to be the case. So they're a very solid team. Their 2 losses, I mean, they lost to Pine Ridge and they lost to Del Rapids St. Mary, and those are not bad losses to have on your ledger. Wessington Springs is 11-1, and their only loss was to Howard. So they have 10 straight wins to their name. And they had a big comeback at the 281, which I happened to be at.
Yeah, was it 25 points?
Yeah, they're down 25 points or 20 points, whatever it was. And they are not as healthy as they probably want to be. They have a few players that have been out, and they expect to maybe get them back. So that was a big kind of statement. I guess they showed me the worst they could play and then the best they could play. And Howard is the one team I have not seen yet, but I expect them to be firmly in the mix.
Another kind of under the radar. I mean, they're 10-3. They're defending state champions. Yeah. They have an all-stater back in Luke Kepsel leading the way. I mean, that's a good squad. They're 5th in the seed points. They've kind of been inconsistent with the love they've been getting in the media polls, but I expect them to be right there, challenging for the state tournament again.
We got a couple regions in the boys. You got Region 2. Castlewood is the number 1 team, 13-2. You got Weston Springs and Woolsey Wessington in there. That's 3 really good teams. And then, as usual, Region 3, Del Rapids St. Mary, Howard, Bridgewater Emory, SCW, Ethan. All have 8 wins or more at this point. And because Parkston has dropped down, the Region 4 has looked very strong as well. You got Viber, Hurley, Parkston, and Freeman all with 10 wins or more. Freeman could be maybe this new team that slips in to the state tournament in Class B from our area that we haven't seen make it as of late.
Just to put it on the record, I'm an advocate of a 32-team pod here. Instead of going to 16, you take your top 4 from the region and then seed them out from there. So maybe get some of those regions with 3 or 4 tournament eligible teams have a shot.
I think it's going to happen at some point. I just couldn't tell you when. And I mean,
Tuesday, up in Tuesday.
I don't know about Tuesday. I assume. Do you want me to go to the girls? Do you want to go?
Yeah, we'll go to Class A. We got a couple. Got Wagner at 10-4, and MVP post Emily Fox here still at 11-2. A couple of area teams. You maybe think one of those could maybe make it between Wagner and MVP.
Yes, you're talking Class A girls.
Class A
correct?
Girls. Yep.
I mean, Wagner, I expect to be a factor before it's all said and done. As you're saying, MVP very solid. They've kind of, while they had Emily Fox, they did a good job of developing this, surrounding cast around her, and so they have looked very good in since she's left. But yeah, that's about it for area schools in Class A at this point. I mean, there are some loaded regions here as well. You just had Sioux Falls Christian and Dakota Valley play for the first time. They were both undefeated, and Sioux Falls Christian won at Dakota Valley. We would expect Hamlin to be good, of course. There's going to be a whole shoot match of teams, and this may be an area where we expect Wagner to be in the mix. Wagner didn't even get to the Sodac 16 last year because the region was so difficult. So I would expect Wagner and MVP to be the 2 teams to make it, and then we'll see what happens after that.
Then in Class B, you've got Parkston. Again, their girls very good. They've just been shy of that Class A tournament the past couple of years, but now look to be one of the top seeds in Class B at 12-2. You've got Ethan at 11-2, ACDC's got 12 wins. They're at 12-3. Then you have Sanborn Central Woonsocket at 11-2. So maybe you're looking at 3 or 4 teams at the Class B girls tournament. You know what you get with Ethan, but again, Parkston, to see them move down, you see kind of where they stack up, and probably the year they finally get to a state tournament.
I think Parkston's, at this point in my mind, Parkston's the second best team in Class B girls basketball, only behind Centerville. And what Centerville's doing is, pretty dang impressive. So no shame in being behind the Tornadoes right now. Parkston is overall kind of a young team, but they play with such composure. They strike me a little bit in a similar mold as the Kernel girls, with maybe not like a ton of size, but just a guard heavy lineup that gets after teams. I was really impressed with them when I saw them play Lyman at the Hanson Classic, correct? Yeah. And, Lyman's a good team too. They're right up there at number 3. I think Parkston, you just look at, they've continued to play several of these traditional Class A teams that they have been playing. So they're going to be relatively, fresh for a lot of these Region 4B, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, teams that they're going to play in the postseason. I expect them to advance out of that and obviously be a very high seed for the Soda 16. Yeah,
their region is not the easiest because you already have Centerville basically locked in as the number 1 seed, and then Parkston would be the 2, and Freeman has not been a bad team this year
good.
Either.
They're like 11 top 12.
They're 11-3, so that's a very competitive region. You're also looking at Region 3 again. Right now, you got Del Rapids, St. Mary, and Ethan tied at number 1. Then you got Coleman Egan, and Sanborn Central Woonsocket as the 4 is potentially dangerous. We've seen Liz Boucher go nuts the last couple weeks with a couple 34-point games.
Chester's the 5 seed in that region. They have 11 wins.
Yeah, and they're going to be on the road in the first round, and somebody's going out right there. So this would be the one that maybe speaks to, if you had a 32-team round, you'd be doing something different. And there's been a lot in this, both A and B for the girls, of just teams just coming in and beating other teams. We saw ACDC pop up and beat teams. We've seen Lyman beat teams. So I think it's going to be kind of a free-for-all. It absolutely is going to matter where you're seated. It always does, but that's especially true, again, this year too. So,
podcast here, talking some high school basketball, KORN News Radio. Again, you can listen to this on Apple iTunes and also on Spotify. You can check out those links online at KORNradio.com. Travis Kriens, Landon Dierks, and Marcus Traxler here. Final high school note, Mitchell High School wraps up their last varsity competition at the high school gym on Thursday with the wrestling versus Pier, and then after that, that's about it for varsity competition at the gym before they move across the street next year for some volleyball and wrestling. So we'll be looking at that and kind of counting down the days and hours for the old high school gym.
Yeah, Landon's writing about something this week, so I mentioned it to you. And
yes.
I mean, it's interesting to think about how much they've gotten out of a pretty standard gym for 60 years.
Below standard with the...
below standard at this point. I mean, they've, obviously have leaks in the ceiling and don't have hot water in the locker room.
Air conditioning.
They don't have air conditioning. They got big fans in the corners. They got all kinds of issues. But, I mean, there have been a lot of sporting events, obviously, in that building, and Travis, you've done volleyball long enough. When the Mitchell's been good, that building has been a very difficult place to play. It is the right size for Mitchell volleyball. It's not the right size for everything else that, a wrestling tournament that you have in there. So it's been interesting to kind of look through some old stuff. The thing I found and I sent to Landon today is they made a big deal when they had this vote last year about how many sports there are, almost 20 sports that you got to accommodate at Mitchell High School. In 1983, Mitchell had 18 sports. They almost had as many as they have now. And so the fact they've gone 40 years with this kind of same situation is kind of wild to me. So I don't know, but I think there will be aspects that we will miss. I know that seems crazy, but just how intimate, they're not going to have that really in the new place when it comes to volleyball and some of these other sports.
Yeah, that was actually one thing. I talked to Corey Odlin just this morning. He said that's one thing that we really want to try to do our best to bring over. He's like, for all its faults, when the MHS gym was rocking, it's pretty unique, and just how close you are to everything. I mean, there is obviously in a room that small, you really can't have a bad seat, and it's like the furthest you can get away from the action is about 20 feet.
Yeah.
So he's like, we're hoping that with the layout of the new place, like you can get a little bit of that, even though it's going to be much larger. But yeah, just a very unique facility. I know, obviously, they've had the volleyball specific court for a number of years now. It's kind of, it's a bittersweet ending. I get the sense from just some of the conversations I've had.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just so much more unique. I always had this feeling when I was growing up of like every new gym that gets built basically feels the same. It's 4 walls and the gyms come out from the walls. And this with the roof and the lights on the windows on the side, I just love a gym that's a little bit different than everybody else. And so I'm going to be a little bit more, I mean, I didn't have to play in there and all I had to do was sweat through it in the fall, but I've always liked it because it was just kind of a weird place and an interesting place and different than every other place you'd go to. And so I'm going to miss it in some ways. Yeah.
Any Summit League thoughts? SDSU women continue to roll. What are they up to? 55, 56 consecutive wins. They've had a couple of close calls. Beat North Dakota State, probably their closest competitor the other night. SDSU men in that 3 seed right now. You have Omaha and St. Thomas at 8-1 on the men's side. So obviously it'll be difficult to beat SDSU once you get to Sioux Falls. But women, obviously looking at maybe that 8 seed going into the big tournament, and they maybe don't even have to win that. They could maybe get an at-large without winning should there be an upset. But any Summit League thoughts? The men's side, I don't know, looks...
It's not good, Travis. The Summit League men's basketball, it's not good.
How bad is it? How bad is it?
It underscored by... That was since we're focused on SDSU at the moment with what you're...
Yep.
Terrible loss over the weekend for the Jackrabbit men to UND.
Yeah.
Terrible loss. I don't care that it's on the road, really. That's a team that they handled pretty good the first time.
They would match up right now in a 3-6.
That's a team that with less than 10 wins.
Yeah.
You just got to win that game. And for coming off such a high, I mean, they handled North Dakota State just a couple days prior. To fall flat like that's pretty tough because you had finally climbed back within 1 game of the lead, and then you let it slip away against a team that really I don't see factoring into the picture here down the stretch.
The whole league for net is 17th, which is actually higher than I expected it to be.
Out of like the 34 conferences?
Yes.
How is that?
But
how is that?
How are they in the top 20?
There's nobody in the top 100.
What is happening?
And there's only 3 teams in the top 200 out of the league. That's St. Thomas, SDSU, and NDSU.
Yeah.
Omaha's 211 in the net.
So Omaha's not even in there.
Omaha's 211 in the net.
Wow.
And this is, you've got, I know that it's, what was it last year? Last year, the title game was Omaha and SDSU, right? In the men? Or was that?
No.
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah, it was.
Yep.
So let's look at the bottom half of the league in case that happens. USD's 239. UND, to your point, is 280. That's terrible. Kansas City, 246. Denver, 326. Oral Roberts, 330 in the net this year.
It was Denver last year in the championship.
Denver. All right. Sorry
Denver
about that.
and SGSU.
Yes, I didn't think it was.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at a 16 seed, whoever comes out of this, and maybe not a play-in. We'll see what happens, but not a good year.
We've been accused of focusing too much on the Jackrabbits in the past, so I'll give a couple seconds to the Coyotes. Play some defense, please.
Yeah.
Like, I think you're a halfway decent basketball team if you could, but you only play 50% of the.
Well, they're committed to this press thing. They press a decent amount, and that leads to them giving up a lot of
That seems like some high school gimmick, man.
I don't know about that. I don't like it.
Just, I think they could be a decent basketball team, but they don't play any defense.
Yeah, they can't rebound. They've been kind of decimated by the injuries and stuff.
That doesn't help. I'll give them a little bit of a pass there, but that's been bad. Yeah. And on the other side, they're just so inconsistent right now, the Coyote women.
Yeah.
I think Grace Larkins is amazing.
Grace Larkins should be the player of the year.
Yes,
but other than that, they don't. Yeah.
I mean, I joked a little bit, and I promise I didn't mean this in any sort of, malicious homerism way, but USD, I saw their headline for their game recap against Kansas City last week, the women, it was like 4 score in double figures. You lost by 23 points.
Oof. Yeah.
Yeah, you had 4 in double figures. You scored 50, and you lost by 20.
Unfortunately, 4 in double figures this year for them is an accomplishment.
I just again, the consistency seems to be an issue there. Is anyone other than NDSU look even remotely capable of beating the SDSU women?
No.
They had the close call a couple weeks ago. The St. Thomas.
St. Thomas and
you never know.
Yeah, North Dakota women gave them a run when they were in Brookings the first time. The highlight, my recent highlight, at least Summit League men's highlight. I don't fully understand where the kicking of the garbage can thing came from for Omaha.
I kind of like it though.
But the thing they did on Saturday, where you could bring in a garbage pail and fill it up with popcorn for $5, that's awesome. And they had almost 4,000 people at the game. So more of that stuff. Because people love that. People, if you get a deal, people love popcorn. A deal. Yeah, you had to pay $5, but you could bring a big can.
Well, I think they put it in big garbage bags for you, didn't they? So I saw somebody. Yeah, but it's not like they're going to just fill your.
Well, what difference does it make? You're going to take that container, then you're going to drop it into the garbage can. It's going to fill that.
I thought it was like no matter what container. I would have brought a 55-gallon oil drum.
I think it was capped at 5 gallons.
Yeah, a little bathroom corner receptacle.
This thing you got down here, you could have brought that.
Yeah, that's a big one right there. So. Some Summit League basketball, again, SDSU on KORN all season long. You want to go to this NBA trade that happened Saturday night?
I just want to remind on the Summit League, we're going to have the conference tournament start on a Wednesday. I guarantee that's going to sneak up on people.
Does it end on a Monday now?
Sunday.
It ends on Sunday.
Yeah.
So it doesn't run into that next week.
Get it all. Just get it done. Get it done. It's terrible. Every year it just gets worse and worse. Let's add more teams. Let's start it Wednesday. Sure. This NBA trade on Saturday night.
Charles.
You had Luka Doncic for Anthony Davis. The tweet goes out at 11 o'clock Central Time.
I was in bed.
You were in bed. I'm waiting for people to respond to this. I'm like, this is a big deal. And first you see the tweet. And you're like, well, is this a real tweet? You got to check the blue check
marks. We don't have Woj anymore,
so
he's not there to confirm.
So it was a real trade. It's one of those trades where if somebody were to hack an account, this is the trade they would propose. And Luka Doncic leaves Dallas to the Lakers for a first-round pick, and Anthony Davis, a couple other pieces in there as well with Utah. But big trade. Everybody was stunned and shocked. You had the Suns and Blazers, the only game going on, and the guys on the bench were stunned. What is happening here? So
I liked did you see that Devin Booker was like, Luka Garza?
Yeah, Luka Garza got traded? Sweet. Oh, wait, no? What?
So Luka Doncic, you can make the case the best player in the NBA, definitely a top 2 or 3 when he is healthy. Surprising, it seemed like Dallas, the reports are Dallas initiated the conversation, so obviously they're done with Luka Doncic with a big contract due here soon.
And they basically only called the Lakers.
Yeah, so they wanted Anthony Davis. I don't know how many players you could have gotten for this to be essentially a 1-for-1 trade. There not a lot of draft picks involved in this when you probably could have gotten a lot of draft picks, but I'm sure Dallas thinks, okay, we've got Anthony Davis. We can still compete for an NBA Finals, and if you're the Lakers, you again get a premier player here for the next 10 years as long as Luka stays healthy. This was the stunner of all stunners. I kind of understand it a little bit more from the Dallas perspective, but a chance for maybe Dallas to win here in the short term and the Lakers to have something here post LeBron. If LeBron wants to play till he's 45, well, you got Luka Doncic right there.
I mean, I think I understand the idea, but the execution of it was terrible. Dallas just, I forget what, Nico?
Nico Harrison, yeah.
He dropped a nuclear warhead on the franchise.
I feel like you probably could have got 3 or 4 first-round picks from somebody.
How are you shopping around you don't shop around?
You shopped it to one team.
You said, and apparently, like he and Rob Pelinka have some sort of relationship.
And that
you made a deal with a friend for one of the three biggest trade assets in the league, and got fleeced in return. The fact that you basically only got back Anthony Davis, got no meaningful draft compensation, no good bench depth really. It's beyond me. I don't even really follow the NBA like that anymore, but this makes I truly think Dallas just set themselves back years.
Yeah. I just want to remind everybody that Rudy Gobert got traded to the Timberwolves. 9 pieces went to Utah for Rudy Gobert. For one guy.
A defensive first center.
Luka Doncic averaged 34 points, 10 rebounds, and 9 assists last year.
Yeah, he's the only guy. He's the only guy in NBA history in his first 50 playoff games to average 30 and whatever he has. 30 and 8.
I get that he doesn't play defense. I don't love it.
They got to the NBA Finals last year because of him.
He was just in the NBA Finals. He's He's going to be first or second team All-NBA every year for the next decade.
Yeah. And Luka lost money because he can't get the Supermax now.
And he's now moving from Texas with no state income tax.
It felt like Dallas was done with whatever his issues were with.
And here's the strange part of this. If they were done with him, how did none of that leak out? How is none of that leaking out? Maybe it will leak out today or tomorrow. But
I expect we're going to hear a lot here in the next week about how toxic it got.
Now they tell us story, where we find out, all the issues that there were. But we were talking about how many different trades have in the NBA in particular have happened where you were just out and out stunned. And there just are not a lot. Mm-hmm. Where usually you get some rumors a little bit. The Rudy Gobert thing, I was just stunned. I was slack-jawed because of the compensation, 9-for-1. I remained slack-jawed. But for there to be no scuttlebutt about this, for it not to be talked about a week before it actually happened, is wild. And if it had been talked about, Nico Harrison and the Mavs would have heard the stuff about like, what, are they crazy? And they probably would have gotten a better deal.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing.
It is, very. It's odd this time of the year the NBA gets the headlines. It's like, kind of in the doldrums before the All-Star break, and another big trade last night with De'Aaron Fox going to the Spurs, and Sacramento got a boatload of picks. They got 3 firsts and 3 seconds.
Yeah,
and Zach LaVine heads to Sacramento from Chicago, so that's probably the biggest trade there's going to be out there. Where Jimmy Butler goes doesn't really matter. I don't think he's going to make any difference. But NBA trade deadline. Once in a while
it delivers.
It delivers very unexpectedly. This time, got the All-Star game a couple weeks from now, and they're going to do the NHL sort of four different teams are going to play each other, and the winners face off in a championship. They tried all of these gimmicks to try and get people to watch and try and
the NBA All-Star game has been terrible for a decade.
You just had the Pro Bowl yesterday, and I'm sure nobody watched it in this flag football. I don't know what the point of it is anymore.
I did watch a little bit of the Pro Bowl when they did the tug of war with the big guys. Right. That was kind of weird. But they only did 2 rounds of that. So it's like, that's
maybe a larger discussion for a larger time. But you look at the All-Star games, you look at load management in the NBA, you look at just all these different, the pitch count in baseball, the whatever you want to call it, the softening of society, where it's like, all right, it's a big issue of where this starts. You could go a lot of different ways. I was watching a clip on YouTube from like 30 years ago where they were talking about the NBA All-Star game, I think in 95, 96, 94. They were talking to like Charles Barkley or somebody, and they had mentioned, hey, is this game probably going to be more competitive than last year because Michael Jordan's back? So I feel like, I don't know, as weird as it may say, it's like, oh yeah, Michael Jordan was around and he wasn't going to let anybody slack off and do what they do now. And you can kind of see, oh yeah, you watch an NBA All-Star game from the 80s or 90s, it was an actual normal competitive game. And apparently he left for a couple years and maybe they goofed off a little bit in 94 and 95. He comes back, they get more serious. He leaves. You've got your key players, your big stars really don't have that type of respect. The LeBrons and Steph Currys and Durant's, your big three. Like, yeah, we're just going to, score 200 points and shoot 75 threes. It's like, who, that Kobe Bryant was kind of that.
Yeah.
Who is that guy that's going to say, okay, we're going to actually play the game. We're not going to have this exhibition. And now it's just devolves into this mess of, oh yeah, we're going to have like these 4 different teams and, USA versus the world. And we're going to try every other thing because we just can't play an actual competitive game of basketball. A lot there.
I don't.
Okay,
lot to chew on.
The dunk contest.
Well, here's my thing. I think the fact that the dunk contest and the 3-point contests are going to be as starless this year as they have ever been, that's why they wanted to get Caitlin Clark involved. That, to me, is a bigger sign of what's wrong with All-Star Weekend than the game. I don't think we should be surprised that we have these issues with the All-Star game because we pay these guys so much more money. If there was a legitimate bonus involved with the All-Star game or your incentive to be there, it'd be different. But they're paid so much. They are, it is an 82-game season. It is a long season. I do kind of understand that the NHL's had it the last few years where players would rather just say they're hurt and take the weekend off and not play. They don't have an All-Star game
82 games,
year,
and unlike the 90s, like every round is best of 7 now.
Yeah.
So like you got to win 16 more games to win a championship. Like it gets to be long, and that obviously that gets thrown around as being the biggest reason why I
guess my question is, what is the incentive to play hard? There isn't one.
There isn't one.
But has there been an incentive to rest? Have we seen somebody say, oh, this team rested, this guy rested, he's healthy for the playoffs? Seems like once we get to the playoffs, everybody's hurt. It seems like, the Dodgers win the World Series, they were down to 3 starting pitchers. Like, well, yeah, everybody gets hurt, and they've signed all these guys. Well, yeah, they're all going to get hurt again.
The All-Star game is not the issue there, though.
No, the All-Star game, it's the bigger thing.
I see what you mean is like people get hurt. Like that's I think the thing. People are getting hurt anyway.
Yeah.
Why would we go and play hard in a game that means absolutely nothing for us and for our franchise?
But it's like people. It's not like a bunch of guys got hurt in the past playing in the Pro Bowl, in the All-Star game. They just played the game and it's fine.
Tell that to Brian Moorman.
Yeah, tell that to Ray Fosse getting his collarbone cracked by Pete Rose.
And it's like I don't understand just playing the game and the dunk contest. There's nobody as anybody has ever heard of in this thing.
Do not slander Andre Jackson Jr.
And it's like one of those things like I'm thinking of, like, do they not want to be embarrassed online on Twitter? Or like what is like LeBron James, one of the best dunkers ever, was never in a dunk contest. Is like, do they not want to fail?
I think if he would have done it as a rookie, like Kobe Bryant did,
he would have won.
He would have won.
Carter,
and it would have been amazing. And then he could have said, "I've done it, and I'm good."
And he never did it.
And he never did it. So that stinks. I think it should be. I don't know. I think it should be of our top 10 picks. 4, you got to get in this thing. The problem is the dunk contest is very close to capped out on what you can do. I don't know what else is out there to still do.
That's the biggest thing. I think people just realize now it's like, what could I possibly do that hasn't been done before, and that like people will think is cool.
We've already driven out a car and jumped over a car. We've already the one where I forget who it was. Was it Dwight Howard? I forget who it was, where they dunked on 2 hoops at the same time. Yep. I thought that was sweet, but I mean, like we're running out of
blowing
ideas.
out Gerald Green, right?
Yeah.
Blowing out the birthday candle.
You probably get rid of it then for a couple of years and say, okay,
what is kind of what happened before?
What is the point of this?
Doing it? Yeah.
What is the point of this if we're going to have, who won it last year? Who was in it? I have no idea.
The G League guy, right? Mac McClung, and he's back.
And it's like he is like the guy now for the dunk contest.
And he's
some guy who's not even in the league. Yeah. It's like that or open it up to random guys. I don't know.
Yeah.
What are the and one mix guys doing now?
They're doing dribbling. They're
in their retirement home.
Yeah.
Is what they're doing. So, yeah, I don't know. And then baseball, just don't throw as hard, I guess. I don't know. You got to throw.
Baseball is, you need to have some moderation. You need to know that this is a 6-month season and I got to make it to the end. But there's no.
But they don't.
We've seen this and they don't. The incentive now with relievers and starters is throw as hard as you can for 5 innings or 6 innings, and then we'll bring somebody else in to replace you.
Even if that means you're only going to throw 120 innings, it's like, well, we got 120 innings of you at max capacity instead of we'll get 200 innings of you being like,
I just don't know that we found baseball feels like it's the one where it has the firmest grasp on it, but like there's not a good time to play these games.
No.
Where it's like in football, the reason the Pro Bowl has gone to crap is like we just beat the shit out of each other for 17 games and more if it's the playoffs. We don't want to go out there and play a 21st game.
And I think the NFL, the flag football thing is an acknowledgement of that. Is like, we're going to go to Orlando and we're just going to have some fun. And when it's not going to be a real game, we're still going to sell tickets. But if you buy a ticket to the Pro Bowl, you have to know that. Know that going in. You know it's not a real game.
Well, and so kudos to the MLB for pulling off a mid-season thing. And I think it has a lot to do with they give that 5 days of rest or whatever.
It's become a whole week now where you get off.
But like with the NBA, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like they found the right mix. Like they try to do it obviously mid-season here at like the 2/3-ish mark.
Yeah.
Like all you have to do is just play. It's like, all right, we're gonna go out there. Maybe the first half we're gonna do our stuff. It's like, just play.
I think
it's up to the players to say, okay, we're gonna do this. If the players want to do it, it'll happen. If it's not, it won't.
I think it has a lot to do with maybe we're underrating like how much effort goes into playing defense, elite level defense at the NBA level. It's like, do you really want to go and do? If you don't have to go and do it for 48 minutes, are you really going to want to do it for 48 minutes? It's probably unpleasant.
And they've tried to change.
So that's why we see no defense being played, 250 points being scored.
I don't have a problem with the no defense thing. Doesn't everybody kind of understand this is an all-star game? I want to see the all-stars do all-star stuff.
No,
And
I
I'm not
want it to be
expecting-
80 to 75.
It needs to be a 2004 Eastern Conference playoff game. I'm not watching the All-Star game to see these guys play a ton of defense. Like the last year, wasn't it? They both got to 200. I thought that was awesome. And I'm not a guy who watches the NBA All-Star game that often, but I'm like, I want to see something that's a little bit different than what I see in a regular night. And quite honestly, these guys going up and down the floor and just kind of freestyling down the court, I'm fine with that. I tuned in knowing that's kind of what I'm going to see. So I'm not all put out by this idea that, oh, it's not 141 to 139. Who cares?
That's better.
I'm tuning in knowing what the situation is. This goes back to everybody's got to be aggrieved or upset online all the time. You know?
That's right.
And I should mention, the NHL, I mentioned not having an All-Star game. They're doing this Four Nations thing in part because the NHL won't, they're trying to grapple with, we want international games, but we don't want to send them to the Olympics. And so this is kind of the trade-off that they're having for now, and I think they are going to the Olympics in a couple years. But we'll see how hard will those players play, because that's a 2-week break they're taking, but some of these guys are not taking the break. They're going to be in this tournament. Will it be any good? I have no idea, but we'll see.
All-Star game is a little bit different, but it's not a whole lot different than just a normal game. We see teams regularly shoot 40 threes a game. There'll be 50 threes a game. It's like,
it is different than a regular game.
Yeah, they'll probably shoot 100 3-pointers.
To Travis's credit, though,
it's not all that different than it used to be.
This is getting as close to like the line as we're seeing NBA games, like regular season games now, where teams
130,
are taking
125. That's like that
and
doesn't pop
teams
an
are
eye.
taking 60 threes a game. It's like
it's been discussed about the 10-minute quarters, but like, should they extend the 3-point line out?
I think they should. I think they should round it off, not take it all the way to the corner, because the corner three is shorter. It's ostensibly easier to hit, although it is easier to hit when they practice as much as they have.
So All-Star game, it's like, what am I watching? There's nothing there to.
Am I going to watch this year? Probably not.
Probably
I don't know.
not.
It all depends on what else is on that night.
I don't remember the last time I've watched an NBA All-Star game, to be honest.
Could be better. Has been better. Won't be better.
Will the Daytona 500 still be happening? That'll be a big question. If there's rain earlier in the day, I might be watching that.
Hopefully not.
Watching that at night.
Final thoughts. Super Bowl's coming up. Is it number 59?
This is it. Yeah.
Chiefs, Eagles in New Orleans, a rematch from 2 years ago. Any strong thoughts? Any strong rooting interest? Do you want to see the Chiefs be the first team to win 3 in a row?
I prefer the Chiefs over the Eagles, so I guess I'm rooting for the Chiefs. I'm not rooting for the Eagles. So
I'm one of the few people who doesn't have a problem with the Chiefs being as good as they are.
Same.
I don't know.
There's always a dominant team.
But they're not dominant.
I understand that.
My issue.
They are dominant in the fact that they're playing for a third straight Super Bowl championship. They went 15-2 this year.
I know some people have maybe soured on him a little, but I think Patrick Mahomes is one of the most likable ultra stars like ever. And so, I mean, like team-wise, I care more about the Chiefs than the Eagles. I will say, though, like I'd like to see Dallas Goedert win.
That's true, yeah. I think Patrick Mahomes is a little like LeBron James, where he's so great at what he does, and when you do that, you're bound to have haters, and the people that pick at Patrick Mahomes are similar to the people that pick at LeBron, where there's just like, there's not a lot really there to pick at, and they get bothered by his greatness. And, I mean, Patrick Mahomes is really good, and
it does not matter what happens on Sunday. He's still the guy,
and he's also done an astounding amount at a relatively young age. Still, I mean, this is how many Super Bowls will this have? This will be his fifth, right?
Fifth appearance.
Yeah, fourth
win.
Yeah,
if he did win it,
and he's 27.
He's
29.
29. So
I mean, September next year. This year will be 30.
Pretty crazy.
And my problem with the Chiefs is the close wins. I don't like the close wins. It's like, all right, it's kind of a fluky close win type of thing. I don't like that.
I just need to know, were you on this train when the Vikings were doing this a couple years ago?
Oh, was I on the train?
I just wanted to know.
Was I on the train, Marcus?
He still talks about it. He doesn't let it go.
I want 2022.
As long as you're consistent, that's all I care
about.
I was
like, what a bullshit team this is.
He did say that.
Oh, this is great. I'm like, no, not a good team.
Not a good team.
Not a good team.
All right. I respect the consistency. I just had to ask the question.
I like Mahomes, he wasn't good this year. It just, they win a bunch of games.
He didn't have to be great. Yeah,
that's what Mahomes, no, he wasn't even.
But
Well, he was not a top 10 quarterback.
Be honest. Would you be surprised if he throws for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns on Sunday?
Yes.
Really?
He hasn't done that all year.
Yeah, I would be surprised if he does that.
I mean,
he's thrown for 3 touchdowns 3 times.
We all acknowledge that he's certainly capable of going out and doing that.
He's not Sam Darnold here. Let's be reasonable about the expectations.
That's right, yeah.
Sure. I mean, they don't really run the same offense.
And a lot of it is a lot of dinking and dunk. It's not what this offense was a couple years ago. It's not what they were when they first burst on the scene. This exciting offense. They're not exciting to watch. I think people think about the Chiefs. They have certain ideas. It's well, this team has changed a lot in the last 2 or 3 years. They don't have this great offense. They just scored 30 points for the first time in 30-some games against Buffalo. It's not a fun team to watch. Over 30, I guess. They've been at 30 a couple of times. 23-14 versus Houston, 32-23. It's not an exciting offense anymore that's going to put up like Detroit. That's a fun team to watch. Certain people look at certain teams. Baltimore is boring. No, Baltimore's not boring. They've got Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry. They put up a lot of points, most rushing yards ever.
And also when they lose, it's biblical, like it was against Buffalo. So
Philadelphia, not a boring team they almost score 60 points. Washington wasn't boring with Jaden Daniels.
What's boring is the tush push, and that's a couple plays a game. But
really good defense for Kansas City, and that's kind of what's got them back here because their offense.
Thing that makes Kansas City interesting is they are at the top and have been at the top, and they aren't as flashy as they were, but they're still finding a way to win every dang game.
If you acknowledge the players that they've lost and how you have to continue to build the roster to kind of keep it alive, that's where they become especially impressive. They don't have some of the explosive players they've had recently, and they've kind of churned through wide receivers like the Patriots did, I guess, in a little bit of a fashion. So the fact they've kind of been able to keep it going, and again, it speaks to you got to have the coach, you got to have the quarterback. I can't help but be amazed with
that's another part of this. I love Andy Reid.
And once he leaves, how do things...
Because how many? This is going to be 6 Super Bowls for him. The 6th Super Bowl game. He had 1 in Philly, and then these 5 with Kansas City. So, and if they win, it'll be 4.
4 for him.
So it's incredible how much they pulled off. Now, there are a lot of reasons the Chiefs are not good to root for, and they got a lot of crap. Terrible people off the field, not counting Mahomes and Kelsey, people that have done bad stuff. So if you want to root against them in that regard, by all means.
And with the officials, nobody would talk about the calls in these games.
Nobody's been talking about the calls.
Nobody would.
Okay.
If they win by 20 points. Because every football game you watch, there are calls that don't go the right way.
That's probably true, but yeah.
Because nobody, if you were to win 35-14, nobody's going to talk about some first down that somebody didn't get, some roughing the passer call that didn't go your way. But how many games
this year were decided by 3 touchdowns? Not very many. That's the NFL, right? I'm not talking about the Chiefs. I'm talking about the whole league.
Sometimes you get those.
Well,
there's 2 or 3 a week. I went through it a couple.
We went 3 years without the Vikings having one because
the Vikings are stupid.
Because Kirk wasn't capable of it.
So, it's probably going to be a close game, and the Eagles are going to have it at the end and can't score, or the Chiefs are, and they are. So
here's my thing: the people last week that are saying I'm not watching it, Chiefs Eagles, I'm not watching that game.
BS.
You're lying to yourself. There's one more game before August to watch it. It's on Sunday, and 110 million other people are going to be watching it. You're going to be watching it. Come on.
We just talked about how I don't know the last time I watched a NBA All-Star game.
Yeah,
I've never missed a Super Bowl.
Yeah, and why
for any
would you?
reason?
You're a sports fan. Of course, you're watching the Super Bowl. Every sports fan, casual or hardcore, is watching, and there's a lot of them out there.
Mm-hmm.
And then that doesn't even count in the people that are literally will show up at your Super Bowl party and go, I don't know anything about these teams. They're watching the game too.
As much as it would pain me, I'd watch the Super Bowl if it was the Cowboys and the Ravens.
Yeah, I will watch every Super Bowl.
That would be like
for the rest of my days. That's how it is. I'm never gonna miss the Super Bowl ever.
That'd be the Super Bowl for my nightmares. And the Ravens and the Cowboys.
With all that being said, I think I'm not watching.
That's you're full.
I'm going to be that guy.
Yeah.
I thought last week, I don't want to watch. I don't need to watch. I don't care who wins.
You're a liar.
Because if the Chiefs win, that sucks. If the Eagles win, I'm glad they won, but it's the Eagles.
You're lying to yourself.
So we're going to see what happens, and as of this moment, I don't plan on it. I'm going to I'm going to do something else. Because I'm going to watch the
What
game.
are you going to do on a Sunday
anything
in
else.
February in
Feed
South
my
Dakota?
baby. Anything
okay,
else.
but you know what you can do? You can
I
feed
can
your
tape it.
child in front of the TV.
But I'm like, but do I want to watch it? Is this fun to watch?
You don't have. It can
This
just
isn't
be
fun.
on.
This is
There's
happening.
going to be the commercials. There's going to be the game. There's going to be the
Commercials have
halftime
been
show.
bad for a
But
long
here's it.
time.
Everybody's going to be talking about that on Monday.
Oh, that's fine. I don't care.
You don't want to have anything to say about any of that?
I've never heard a Kendrick Lamar song.
Okay.
And if he were to step here, I'd have no idea who
Here's
he
what's
is.
going to happen on Sunday. The game's going to happen. Halftime's going to happen. People are going to complain about the halftime show. And I'm going to think in my head, I may not respond. I'm going to say, this halftime show's not for you. If you don't like this, it's not for you. Don't complain. I mean, everybody's got to complain online. But
Like, who
some
is this
things are
guy
not
and
for
what is he
you.
saying?
Some things are not for you.
Could Garth Brooks be?
And I'm not sure that halftime show's even for me.
No.
A white guy living in South Dakota.
No.
So
There we go. Super Bowl 59. One final thing. You got one final thing here. Something I need to be explained about.
here we go.
Tom Brady is going to be doing the game, and people talk about I think he's got a 10% stake in the Raiders.
Yeah.
Ownership and the conflict of interest. What is the conflict of interest? There's all these restrictions on he can't go to the production meeting, he can't be here. What is explain to me what information he's getting by broadcasting the game when he's a minority owner of a team? Explain, because I have yet to have anybody say, well, this is a conflict of interest because of this.
Here's the
Okay.
here's the complication.
What is it?
When the Raiders are good, he might be doing Raiders games. The Raiders are not good. He's not
That'd be fine.
doing Raiders games. It will be a problem at that point because he literally owns 10% of the team.
Well, then don't
One
have
of
him
the
do
two
Raiders
teams.
games. That'd be
Okay,
easy to
and
do.
that
Like,
would be fine too.
if they say you can't do, we'll put Greg Olson on the Raiders game. Should they ever?
In 10 years, if he's supposed to call a Super Bowl and the Raiders are in it, I guess
Like, what is the conflict of interest there?
he owns part of the team.
What is he going to do? Tell the coach, like, hey, I heard this from somebody? Or what is the...
In theory,
Like,
the
what
idea
are
is-
people afraid of that's going to happen?
No, the idea is that he's not going to
Going to
be.
be partial? Of course he wants...
Yeah, he's going to want the Raiders to win.
Well, yeah, when Troy Aikman or Tony Romo does a Cowboys game, yes, they want the Cowboys to win.
Yeah.
It's like, well, yeah, if a former coach or a player has a game with their former team, it's like, well, yeah, and they're going to have to try and play it down the middle. I don't know what they feel he's going to be biased. I don't understand.
I don't think he'd be biased. I think, but there is a conflict there. It's
But I have yet to have anybody say what
how
does-
much is it going to show up on air? Probably not that much.
Like, I don't... Yeah, the broadcasting aspect of it, I don't understand. Like, he's going to get some inside information he can use to...
Well, here's the thing that I
Sign
have
something? I
an
don't
issue
know.
with is they say, well, he can't he can't be in these production meetings. Then the Vikings are playing the Packers. Tom Brady's calling the game. He's on the field talking to Sam Darnold before the game.
What's the
on
difference?
the field. Well, that's the thing that you said he couldn't do or
He's doing it.
wasn't going to have access to. So if he's able to just talk, I mean, granted, are they talking about here's what you're going to do on 3rd and long? No. But
You never know.
I mean,
Like, they were talking about, okay, Ben Johnson might be a candidate for the Raiders job.
that is an instance where it
Okay.
could have been an issue.
And I think
because
he did. Did he do that?
He did the game and they brought it up on the air and he was all.
Yeah, like he talked to Ben Johnson before the game. Like, I'm pretty sure he talked to him before that.
Yeah, probably
Before that.
he interviewed him for the Raiders job.
And, like, he can talk to Ben Johnson whenever he wants to, whether it's before a game, after a game, the week, whether he's doing the...
This is a separate issue.
I don't
What you're
understand.
bringing up is, will the NFL crack down on Tom Brady if he steps outside the lines of what he's supposed to do? No, probably not.
I have yet to have anybody say, well, this is a conflict of interest because...
It absolutely is a conflict of
He's
interest
gonna
to have
have-
him call the game with the Lions and Washington involving Ben Johnson when he's interviewing Ben Johnson for a Raiders head coaching job. It is. Like, that's not... I mean, it is. And
Like,
it's a conflict, but then later in the game, he kind of criticized the trick play that Ben Johnson called. So, I mean, I guess he kind of covered
are
his
people
bases
like, well,
there.
he's not going to say anything bad about Ben Johnson because he wants to hire him? Is that part of it? I don't...
Yeah.
And that, of course, that didn't happen.
That wasn't what ended up happening.
I don't understand. Yeah, that's not...
There's a difference between there's a conflict of interest and then how much it actually...
There's got to be like a different word for it. There's like...
well, like how much it actually impacts what happens. Not that
none.
much.
Like, he's... No. It sounds like he's, not the general manager, but he's obviously involved in day-to-day operation. And they ended up choosing Pete Carroll. So it's like, okay.
If he wasn't getting paid $37 million a year to do this NFL thing, he'd probably be just doing the Raiders thing. But
I'll be on the search for what is this conflict and
the
who
money is going to keep him at Fox. He's
can
not
explain
going
it
to
to
give
me.
up the Fox money. That's pretty significant.
There we go. podcast, Spotify, Apple, iTunes. Probably get on a every other week basis. We're kind of in the I'm back. We're back. And,
Finally.
We're finally back after some baby duty.
Did you send out a press release? It says
I'm back. I'm back doing Sturgis Mitchell on Friday. So I like that they moved the Roosevelt game to the Tuesday last week instead of having that Pierre Roosevelt's back to back. It's like you can find a game somewhere other where Mitchell doesn't need to be playing a back to back game. So that's I appreciate the schedule.
Well, the AA season's so long.
It was flexed.
Guys need nights off.
It's a hard 7:05 start time tomorrow night because of TV.
Yeah, apparently, yeah.
So Super Bowl. We got high school basketball. We'll be talking more about that. We got baseball coming up here. We can talk about
we had
all
baseball,
sorts of baseball
in
stuff.
Mitchell,
Yeah.
January.
That went well.
It happened.
Really, really well. So
yeah, you look outside today and you'd be hard pressed to.
You wouldn't be playing today.
let's get the 4 games in while we can. So yeah, busy time of the year. The first week of February. Again, where can people go online for stories, streaming, video? You got it all. Where can people go?
MitchellRepublic.com. You can find all of the content there. Landon's writing his fingers off.
Writing his heart out.
Yeah, he's giving all he's got. So there you have it.
Travis Kriens, Landon, Dierks, Marcus Traxler. Podcast here this week on KORNradio.com.